celebrating with us. Thank you for that. International Coaching Week edition 2023. And we have with us our beloved Nada. Nada became a life transition coach to help people navigate their life transitions, whether personal or professional. She has been through different life transitions, some big and some small. She was born in Lebanon and grew up in France. She lived and worked in Paris, Beirut, Sardinia, Dubai, and Miami. She has worked in 4 different industries, including coaching as an entrepreneur and an employee. She was in the hospitality business for 15 years, in operations and as a consultant for touristic projects all over the world. She finally opened her restaurant and closed it in 2012. She then shifted into marketing for a furniture design company and then launched her e-commerce website. Her husband, 2 daughters, and Nada, they live as an expat life and move every 3 to 4 years to new countries. She can honestly say she has become fluent in the language of transition. Nada has received her ICF certified coach training from CTA and holds certifications in neuro-linguistic programming and timeline therapy. She's a member of the American Board of NLP, the Timeline Therapy Association, and the International Coaching Federation. Welcome, Nada. Welcome to International Coaching Week.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you, ICF South Florida, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Valeska, for the trust and the support. So before we start, I just wanted to make sure that you all have a piece of paper. And if it's possible, I'd like you to draw 3 squares, and inside of those squares, 9 circles in lines. I don't know if you see it well. It will be part of,
yes,
of an experience that I'd like you to have during this presentation. Can I share my screen? Okay. So I'll be talking about a subject that is very dear to me, that is managing the certainty of uncertainty and how to help our clients navigate life challenge with the GROW model. So it's the story. It's the story of someone you know. It's the story of your neighbor, your sister, your colleagues, the story of your parents, your clients. It's the story of losing your job after 15 years, of getting a divorce, of a midlife crisis, of moving to a new country, a new culture, of becoming a new parent. It's the story of fear, of uncertainty, of loss, but also a story of renewal and rediscovery. So we've all lived through major disruptions and transition. And I'd like you to remember how those major life transitions feel as we go through the GROW model together today. But before starting, I have a question for you, and I would like you, if you can answer in the chat. So what type of transition have you been most exposed to with your clients? And if you're not a coach, what would be a major life transition you think that you have had in your life? I don't know if I have access to the chat, actually. Do I? Okay.
I think you can see it, Nada, and if you can't, I can read them for you.
Yeah, I see now. Career change, career transition, career. Health concern, changing transition, divorce. Change of job, going from corporate to launching their own brand, retirement, relationship change, divorce, moving to a new country, come to live in the USA, and career change, sure. Health concern. Thank you so much for all your answers. Oh, sorry. It's going too fast. Okay, so let's start. So grow. After a transition, we grow. This is why I chose this word. It represents the cycle of change and that we can go through and that our client can go through. So change is constant and change is everywhere. And we often use the metaphor with nature to describe the season and the cycle of change that we go through. So with all the virtual evolution that we're seeing now, there's many more changes in our life than in the lives of our parents or our grandparents, and most probably more than our kids, less than our kids, I mean. So each of our life chapters are shorter than the ones of our parents, because we have much more opportunities to change career, because we can work from everywhere. So very often our clients have to deal with situation and context that are completely new to them. So there isn't any point of reference. It's completely unknown. And so we need to constantly adapt to new situation. So this GROW model is based on Frederick Hudson's Wheel of Change that I have adapted and that I totally recommend for you to see and have a look at. So this cycle exists in many other avenues, but it's the framework that I use with my clients when they're in times of uncertainty. So even if you're not a life transition coach, your client might be going through a transition. So it can be, for instance, your client having one of their first kid going off to college, and they need to adapt to this transition, not only not having them at home anymore, but also this new relationship that they have to create, and that they might apprehend. So you want to be able to give the support to your client. And this model is here as a map or a summary, let's say, of understanding it in what phases or stage of transition your client is. So, and understanding the process of change will allow your client to accept more easily and more positively the transition. So G is for grief. So the first phase or stage, let's say, when we are going through a loss, let's say it's a grief. Then comes the phase of reflect. O is for overcome, and W is for want. So those 4 stages or 4 steps are not linear. You can be going through the phase of overcoming and go back to a phase of grief. The time frame for each phase can vary from a person to another, and we never allocate a time frame actually to those phases. So we don't have to go through all those phases. According to Frederick Hudson, there are 2 types of change that we can have. The type 1 transition is an evolution. So we maintain what we have. We are happy with our overall life, but we want to make little changes to improve what we already have. So it can be, for instance, work time, or introducing a new activity, or moving to a bigger apartment. But the type 2 transition is a much more fundamental one. So usually it implies a transformation. There is an identity crisis, a lot of questioning in the belief, in the values. Not only there's an external loss, but we feel that there is an inner loss that is felt too, and we don't know what's next, and we don't know how we're going to overcome this. So what we will be seeing with this model is a transition, a type 2 transition. So I couldn't be talking about change without referring to the pyramid of logical by the logical level of Robert Dilts. So as you can see, it's the representation of all the levels at which change can occur in an individual. I will not dive into it in details. It would take too much time. And I guess we know the tool, but it's important to know that our problems always are located in one of or more of those levels. So whether the environment, the behavior, the capabilities, values and belief, identity and purpose. And the solution will never appear, will never be at the same level in the pyramid. And any change that you make at one level will have an impact on the rest. So if you are going through a type 2 transition, you will be going through a lot of questioning in the top 3. So there will be a change in your values, in your identity, in your purpose. And it will have an impact on your environment, the people that you live with, your body, the behavior, your capabilities, all the resources that you have. So here is a quote that I refer to a lot and that I like very much. And I think it says really well what I'll be talking about. Just as a caterpillar cannot anticipate becoming a butterfly when it enters its cocoon, adults feel awkward and lost at the beginning of a transition. But when they come out of the cocoon, they feel transformed with new life direction. You lose control over much of your life, but you gain inner trust and spiritual readiness to grow. So it's a quote by Frederick Hudson. So like we said, G is for grief. I'll be explaining, I'll be showing a little bit how the client aspect of each, or the position of the client in each of those phases, and then us as coaches, how we can support our client during those phases. So here our client is in a stage of grief, in a step of, so the other words that we can use for grief can be abandonment, a goodbye, a choice, a letting go. So grief is not about, very often grief is associated to losing a person, but it can be also losing your house in a hurricane. It could be losing a part of yourself, as for instance, getting married. So the single part of me, it's losing your vitality, losing an object that has an emotional value for you. So the bigger the gap between the reality and the expectation, and the bigger it is hard to let go. The grief is not only about grieving what we have lost. So I have lost my job after 15 years of loyalty. It's not about only grieving this loss, but also grieving all the future that was associated to this loss. So all the project, all the growth that I have imagined in this company, all the security, the sense of security, the control that I thought I would have over the future that I'm constructing in my head. So it's even if it's a rupture that we have chosen, very often becoming a parent, you go through a phase of grief too, when it's your first kid, even though it's a transition that you have chosen. So here the client is in a state of rupture, in a state of shock. It's a downtime. So here the client feels that things are going to stay the same. There is no issue. They're very much on the effect side of things. I'm a victim. I can't do anything about it. The attention is on me, but everything that is happening to me is because of external things. So there's a state of resistance, a resistance to change. I don't want to let go, a feeling of being stuck. The client can be very defensive. I can't do anything about it. I want things to go back the way they were. If only I did this, if only they had known. I have no value. I'm such a loser. So the client is flooded by the emotions, frustration, resentment, fear, anger, guilt. There's a big feeling of loneliness, a state of passiveness, low energy, a decrease in motivation, and an increase in negativism. So here, as a coach, we need to show a lot of patience, a low voice, a very slow pace, understand the emotions of our client, and practice, of course, compassion. we want to be able to validate our clients' emotion. And very often when I tell to my clients that they are going through a phase of grief, very often they're very like, they're relieved. Because when I tell them, not only you have to grieve what you have lost, your job or your partner in the case of a divorce, for instance, but you have to grieve also all the future that you have imagined with this partner. Very often they're very touched by that and they feel validated and heard. So it's about understanding the emotion, validating the client's emotion and helping them release the emotions, whether through journaling, crying, running, anger. So we want them to release. And there's an analogy that Wayne Dyer does that I like a lot. It's when you press an orange, what comes out of it? It's not going to be pineapple juice. It's what's inside. So when you put pressure in a human being, what's inside of this human being is going to come out. So whether it's frustration, sadness, it has to come out. It's important to make sure that our client has the support of their family, of their friend, that they're not alone. It's not about moving on, it's about moving through. And in that state, we want to be able to bring back a resourceful state to our client. A way to do that is, for instance, going back to previous examples of challenges and transition that they have had in their life, in their timeline, and understanding that they do have all the resources in them, the flexibility, the agility, the resilience to bounce back from their own story already. They have been through a lot and they know how to find solutions. So at this stage, we avoid giving any task or work to the client. We just want to understand what is hard for them in this situation, which aspect of this situation, very much, because here it's important to understand that if the client does not get detached from the situation, there cannot be a new attachment. So, and very often the clients tend to want to get back what they have lost, but we don't want to jump into actions directly here. So R is for reflect. Here, reflect is a time of pause, a time of reflection. So there is a detachment from the previous life. The client has accepted. He's in search of a new direction. So with this acceptance, there is a lot of sadness that comes with it, because it begins with the pain of the grief and saying goodbye to the old life structure. And all the preoccupation that comes with it. So there's a lot of doubt, of confusion. The client is in the fog. I can't see how things can evolve. I'm moving forward, but I don't know where. A lot of loneliness. And here you can see very often that the client is going back and forth from past and future. So the client is not anchored in the present. It's very much like, if only I did that, if only I told them, if only at the time I knew that he or she was going through that, what is going to happen to me? What if I never find another job? What if I don't find love anymore? So there's a lot of coming back and forth, past and future. Here the client gets in touch in this reflection phase. They get in touch with their belief, their core values. So here they're going to be in a state of, this is impossible, I will never make it. But actually this is a limiting belief, right? So, but for them, this is the reality. This is how it is, and I'm stuck. And so there's a lot of self-sabotaging here. Very often also the client might go into negative ways to cope, whether it's scrolling into social medias or spending hours in front of the TVs or binge eating or drinking, whatever, but they might go into negative ways to not feel the discomfort anymore. So there's a low energy, a lack of sleep, a lot of worrying. but at the same time, a big process of reconnection to the self, to enjoy little things in life, and going back to being an actor and wanting to again take back the control of their life. And here the coaching can be really powerful, because it takes an ending to find a beginning, and here the client has accepted, so we can go to a new beginning. So as a coach, we believe in our client, of course. We are calm, we understand that it's a long process. We can definitely use the metaphor with the nature and the cycle of season, the seeds that become a tree, the time that it takes to go through this process, the time of a pregnancy. So it's really, this reflection phase is really like, if we want to use an analogy, like just pruning a rose bush to make it more robust. This is exactly the reflection phase. So it enables the client to discover new part of themselves. We want to regenerate positive feelings and a resourceful state. So we want to help them find strategy strategy for resilience, like walking in nature, physical activity, connecting with safe friends, enjoying their time, dancing classes, anything that is easy for them to do. We want to help them create a daily routine around self-compassion, self-love, and self-care. Daily routine is such an important thing, because they're really the secret weapon to anxiety. Because when automatic schedule provides a structure in the middle of chaos, and it anchors you to the present moment. So very much often when we talk about loneliness, the client is feeling lonely because it comes from too much time and energy on the self-contemplation. So creating a routine and activities to let them go out of this worrying that can make things worse. You know, when they say what they say about pilots, that when pilots are in a crisis, they are taught to rise to the they're taught not to rise to the challenge, but to fall back on system and process. And this is what we want to for our client, because at this stage, we with all the uncertainty and the stress, the quality of the decision making is degrading. So, and very often here, what I like to ask to my client, but it can be later on, it really depends how you feel your client is going through this reflection part, is if you could go back to your job or to whatever you have lost, would you want it all again? And here, very often, they might say, I'm not sure. I don't know. So here's where you know that the transition is really starting. So here, we're going to do a small experiment, let's say, a small exercise. It's thinking outside of the frame. So when we are facing a challenge, a problem, we are limited in our way of thinking. So our level of conscious awareness is often limited by our box. And we all have this box that we operate with. And the wall of this box limits us, and they are made of our programmed belief system, our perception, our experiences, our education, our culture. So here the coach does not enter the box, but we challenge the integrity of this box. And as we bring consciousness to this box, we realize that it's made of paper and can be broken. So what I would like you to do is to, I don't know if you did already, is to draw this drawing. So here we have 9 circles, okay? So with your pen, I'd like you to join those 9 circles with 5 lines without removing your pen and without going through the same circle twice. Only lines, no curves. And I'll give you 1 minute.
Sorry, now, can you explain again? You no curves, just straight line.
Exactly. So you have those 9 circles. I'll do it because it's so I want you to, with 5 lines, to join all the circles, okay, without going through the same circle twice.
And not moving the pen, right?
Oh, wow. Who did that? You can draw on my presentation? That's great. Okay, perfect. I love it. Okay. So here's the solution. Did you have it all? Ah, nice. Okay, so there's a lot of different type. Okay, that's one too. Nice. Okay, so like you see, we automatically think for solutions that are within the frame, and when sometimes we need to actually think outside of the frame. So it is hard for our brain to think outside of this. And the solution does not stand at the level of the problem, but beyond. So whenever we are confronted to a problem, we put a framework around it, which make it harder to find a solution. But I'm sorry, let's go to the second one. So here, what I would like you to do, am I on this exactly the same drawing, but what I would like you to do instead of 5 lines is to do it with 4 lines. So can you delete your drawings? So 4 lines are the same. You join the 9 circles without removing the pen and without going through the same circle twice. Four lines. Should I show you the solution?
Nada, you have a question here in the chat.
Sure.
Linda is asking, is this an activity you would have the client do?
In a group session, yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure in an individual session, but in a group session, yes, definitely. So I'm sorry, but someone drew on my drawing. Ah, so where am I? Yes. Okay, so here you can see the solution under your drawings. So you see, in order to draw for to link those 9 circles with 4 lines, you need to go out of the frame. Because, like I said, when we are confronted with a problem, very often, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's much more easier for you to solve the problem of others. Why? It's just because we don't have the same thinking pattern, the same thinking framework. So your map of the world is not the same as mine, and in my problem, I'm not going to find a solution. But if I listen to yours, I might you might be much more helpful. So 5 lines might be easy. The 4 lines was a little bit more tricky. What about if you do the same, but with 3 lines now?
Claudia, can we erase this one?
I don't know how to erase it.
I don't know. I could just
I think
erase
the
mine.
person who did
Rosario.
erase.
Rosario, I think.
Rosario, could you
No,
erase?
it's not mine, actually.
It
Ah,
has, oh, okay. You were,
I erased mine.
I don't know because, sorry. Okay.
I did it. I could. I erased it.
So the same exercise, linking the
9.
9, yes. The 9 circles with 3 lines. Should I show you the solution?
Yes, please.
Or
Yes.
You have it?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so the bigger the problem, the more we have to look for a solution that is outside of our frame. So we very often tend to look for a solution where the problem appeared, and this is exactly the logical level of Robert Dill, the pyramid, that the problem is always at another level. So that's why it's very important to talk to someone outside of us to solve a problem and not get lost in our own reflection. So here the client is in a state of overcoming. The client has a new trust in the next step. They're eager to explore. They're eager to explore new skills, a new way of thinking. There's a sense of clarity. I know more what I want and what I don't want. I'm excited to see what will be the next chapter of my life. There's also, there might be a feeling of division. There's a part of me who wants to do that, but another part that don't believe I can. So these two parts, like those saboteurs that we often refer to, but in NLP, there's a very nice tool that is called part integration, where we integrate those two parts because those two parts works for us and not against us. But this is another presentation. So here the client is very much in their values and their belief. They go from introspection to action. They want to find solution. There is more optimism, a regain of energy. I'm ready to explore, train, network. So here as a coach, we want to notice how the client is talking about the event. And if it's in the past, we want to let the client know of this shift. Here, I love to do a value work with the client. I think it's very important. Like, for instance, let's say your client career was laid off from his job. In this situation, the value. So, sorry, let me gain clarity again. Okay, so let's go back. So you have the value and you have the belief. The client was laid off, and their sense, the value of security was shaken. With this value was linked a belief. So in order for me to feel safe, I have to work in a company. So this job was giving me safety. From being laid off, the sense of security was shaken. It doesn't mean that it's not a value anymore. It's still a priority. But the belief that I am safe in a company is not true anymore. So it opens to new type of beliefs. I can be an entrepreneur maybe and find and be safe. I don't, like, for instance, during COVID, during the lockdown, we all had certain negative emotions that came out of us, right? So for instance, for me, I remember that I was feeling very sad because I couldn't, because the borders were closed. So I couldn't go see my family in case of emergency, or my family couldn't come. So in this transition of the lockdown, I remember that the value of family was very important. It took a very important place for me. For other people, the value of security was very important. The health was very important. So they were all the time cleaning everything, the anxiety of not being, catching the COVID. For other people, the value of connection was very important. They felt frustrated by not being able to go out and meet other people. So very often when we are in a transition and negative emotions are appearing, they're actually related to our values. It reflects our innermost value. So here with our client, it's very important to not only to work on the value and understand what are their value now, and recalibrate those values, but also what are the beliefs associated with those values. In this phase 2, it's everything around emotional intelligence. So understanding that your thoughts are going to create a feeling, and that the feeling is going to create a behavior, and that behavior will create an outcome. So it's important to understand how we think about what is happening and develop emotional intelligence. We want to nurture a feeling of productivity, efficiency, mastery, the skill of planning. It's important to find joy in the small things and in indulgence the client can look forward to. Here, what I like a lot also is to ask the client, what are the positive learnings and the takeaways that you have had from this experience? Because taking all the positive learnings will allow them to move forward without any like
obstacles.
Not, yeah, but not, let's say, like you have been laid off or divorced, but not any amertume. I forgot how we say it in English. Anyway, so the positive learning. Bitterness. Yes, thank you. So listening, for instance, a positive learning can be, I should have listened to my intuition and leave this job before they fired me, because I felt that I was supposed to go. Or the positive learning is that I am well equipped to go through any challenge, or I'm very much loved by my family and I have a great support system, or that I'm a loyal person. So we want to be able to take any positive learnings that from this situation. Then we are in the final phase, that is the want. Here the client has a new wanting, a new project, a new sense of purpose, of meaning, a new sense of self-esteem. I'm doing what I like, and by doing that, I'm building a better world. So here we are very much at the top of the pyramid of Robert Dilts, the purpose, the meaning. There's a feeling of calm. I'm in harmony. I'm feeling alignment. My action reflects totally my inside, my heart. And there's a serenity, a clarity. Of course, there's going to be saboteurs. Of course, there's going to be a part of me that is resisting. But at the same time, there's a belief in the process, and I know why I'm doing that, for who and why. So there's a full of gain of energy, feeling healthy. So here we're more into the traditional coaching, create a new future, define the new project, create a new plan, stimulate creativity, meeting people. Here I love to do a lot of visualization, whether in 3 months, 6 months, how do you see? What do you see? How do you see yourself? What are you feeling? Who are the people with you? How is the image bright? fixed, moving. What are the resources that you need? Is the new project that you're working on ecological? What are the SMART goals? How to make decisions? What's the intention? What is the intention of your new project? Who is it that for outside of you? So it's bigger than you. And what will you get? What will you achieve? Who do you have to be? So all those questions that we know. Thank you very much for being here. I still have one last question for you. Which of those 4 phases of grief, reflect, overcome, want, are the most challenging for you when supporting your clients? Can you tell me in the chat?
I'm going to say the grief.
Grief.
Yes, like accepting
The want,
accepting the change.
the overcome, grief, 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 overcome. Thank you. It's interesting to see. Thank you, everyone. So I don't know if we have time for a Q&A.
Yes, we still have 7 minutes
Okay.
for Q&A.
That was fantastic, Nada. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for being here.
I agree. This presentation was amazing.
Thank you, Claudia.
Yes, I
Thank
agree
you.
too. I just really love how you broke it down into that GROW model and really gave me something to think about moving forward with my clients. So thank you, Nada.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nada. I learned so much. Even I consider me like a transition coach too, but I love this model, the GROW model. So beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria.
I think Chris wants to talk.
Yes, sure.
Can I ask a quick question? And maybe this is not a quick question, but I'm relatively new to coaching. And of course, we learn the difference between coaching and therapy. And it seems to me like one would have to be very aware of that fine line. How do you distinguish between your client in a situation that involves so much grief, and how do you distinguish between whether they need you or a therapist?
That's a very good question. And the line can be very thin, but I think that also when you feel that your client is really in a state of passiveness, really not wanting to do anything, and not moving, not wanting to indulge in little habits in order to feel better, yes, it's most probably better to step out and advise them to see a therapist. Of course, there's a limit in what we can do, but you feel when your client is going through grief, but wants to move through and not to stay like it's a long process. It doesn't mean that very often, for instance, I have a client that she was going through a divorce, and sometimes what the client can do is take a break of the coaching and see a therapist and come back. So what she did is that during this phase of grief, we worked together as much as we could, but at the same time, we couldn't, like, there was something more. And so she went to a therapist because it triggered so many things in her. And then she came back a year later. She was still grieving, but she was also reflecting, and she wanted to move forward.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And actually, now that you mentioned that, I remember that from my training, that it's if a client is stuck and really can't move forward or not open to moving forward, that's kind of an indicator that therapy may be better. So thank you.
Nada, can I add something to that?
Sure.
Chris, I found something that helped me in the beginning parts of my coaching, it was explained to me that the difference between coaching and therapy, when Nada talks about grief, it's grief in the present moment for the transition that, she's trying to help someone through. When you think of grief and you think of therapy, you think of something that past experiences that are affecting your present moment. That's where, as a coach, we aren't really qualified to help with those past experiences and how it's affecting. But if the grief for the transition is in the present moment grief of what you're losing, and they're willing to move forward, then I think that's where Nada's Grow model is fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, because very often when you go through grief, what it triggers, it's not only the grief of what's happening now, the loss that you're having, but it can also open old wounds. So if you feel that, yes, it's opening old wounds, yes, here our let's say our support is not, I mean, you need the support of a therapist, definitely.
And just adding into that, totally agree. Amazing, Nada, was you.
Thank you, Valeska.
Model, excellent. And also therapy and coaching can happen in parallel.
Yes, it's true.
And then is when we see how different it is, the work, because we are in different fields, and so it can happen in parallel. Therapy is going to be working at one level that will help coaching, and coach will be helping therapy in a way.
I see that we have two. So Eric, you have a question, and Nicole?
I do. I just want to say thank you for providing the framework, because we work in frameworks, and frameworks are often so helpful. And when we're talking about grieving, that can be very confusing for me as a coach. So to have these sort of, like you said, the pilots who are in trouble, to have these systems and processes to fall back on and use this framework to take a client through something deep in grief or deeply troubling is very helpful. So thank you for that, Nada. I did want to just put it out there, though, that, or in addition, total yes and moment, that, this does not need to, we do not need to wait for someone, I don't think, to be in deep crisis to use a model like this. I'm reminded of a client that I'm working with now who is about to go on a very positive jump in his life, where he's leaving his corporate job and going off on his own and becoming an artist. And it's like the awesomest thing ever for this person to do at his 60-year-old. He is stuck, though, and where we have found that he has gotten stuck is he's grieving. He is not properly grieving for the loss of his corporate life. He's not yet shed a tear for that part of his life, and thus it has been perplexing for him to go on to that next stage. So just adding that in there. And thank you, Nada.
Very nice query. Totally. Thank you, Eric, for sharing.
Hi, thanks a lot, Nada, for the presentation. It was really wonderful. Eric has somehow answered my question, because I wanted to ask if this model is mainly for problem-solving coaching, not so much from good to excellent coaching. Can it be, or?
But it depends on the transition, because you can have positive transition too, but positive transition, like for instance, sorry, can you, because I want to make sure that I'm replying to your question correctly.
Yeah, if this model is specially designed for problem solving coaching, not so much for achieving new objectives, new goals.
But I guess that even if you want to attain a certain objective or new goals, there are going to be certain barriers. So because we are all conditioned by our map and the map of the world and our perception, so there might be certain problem that you can encounter when it comes to achieving your objective and goals. But here, what we're talking about is really a transition. So either it's a transition that you have decided or a transition that you haven't decided. So I don't know if I replied to your question, but it
yes.
can be okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have time for other questions, or if there is a.
I think we can have one more. We're 1 minute over. Anyone else? No?
I don't know if I have mentioned, because I feel that I have talked so much, but it's important to understand also that when you are going through a transition like this one, there's a loss of identity. Like really, you don't know who you are without this job after 15 years. This job has given you a certain meaning, a certain identity to your life. You don't know who you are without your partner anymore. So who am I as a single person? So there's a lot of questioning and identity crisis.
Absolutely.
I would
Thank
also
you,
say it
Nada.
doesn't have to even be a crisis, Nada. I think you're spot on. It can be any transition. Like I just think about me transitioning from my prior career into coaching, and the process that I went through was very similar as what you described, and I recognized a lot of bits in there that are applicable to me, and it wasn't necessarily a negative experience at all. Or a painful one. It was one of awareness and growth, and which I think are all positive things.
For sure, because this is why I chose the word grow, because at the end it's positive, and we all go through those type of transition, but very often we go through those transition in a survivor mode. We are not aware of those different steps that we might be going through. This is why when very often you tell your client or you explain those phases after the grief, and not at a moment where they are ready to listen, very often they're like, you are creating the awareness that you are going through this and it's normal. So for them, it's a relief. But yet it can be very positive too. It doesn't have to be dramatic at all. It's enriching, that's for sure. So when you move from a country to another, it's very enriching, it's for the best, but you might find yourself also shaken under your feet and not stable and not knowing how to create or be yourself in this new world or new setting.
Thank you, Nada.
Thank you so much, everyone.